It begins as an uneventful summer day for the firefighters in Three Rivers, Texas. But when the alarm sounds for an oil tank fire, they quickly respond. The tank, which holds oil from field wells, has overflowed. A spark, possibly from a passing car, ignited the spilled oil. The fire spreads into the tank, and now 20,000 gallons of highly combustible crude oil are burning, creating plumes of jet black smoke. It will not be an easy fire to extinguish. Firefighters spray fire retardant foam to extinguish the flames outside. The foam cuts off the fire's oxygen supply to smother it. But getting it to the oil inside is a problem. The only opening is a small hatch on top of the tank. So firefighters must shoot foam through the opening, trying to hit a very small target. They use a lot of foam, and when the flames go down, they think it worked.
Everybody seemed to be confident that the fire was being put out. You can see some of the firefighters actually drinking soda and having sandwiches.
But the fire only appears to be under control. Suddenly, it explodes back to life in a massive fireball, catching everyone by surprise.
Damn it! I got my arm burned.
You okay?
The blisters started to swell, and it got very uncomfortable, and the pain just wouldn't go away.
All right, this is crude from a field up in the 20 sector, standard crude. Now, saying standard crude, the crude is different all over our county. You can be on one side of the street and it can be really sweet crude, very little H2S, put in your car and run it direct out of the pump. And then you can go across the street and they can't get it out of the ground without heating it and keeping it heated, or it'll go solid. This crude's got a lot of light ends in it, so it's going to ignite pretty readily. The thing about crude oil is that all crude has water in it. Regardless of whether we put it in with a hose trying to do an extinguishment, it has water. It's part of the process. It naturally can get into the tanks from rain and other avenues like that, and then it's got water in it when it comes out of the ground. And so it's already got the water that lends itself for a boilover, whether we do anything or not to it. This crude has water in it. Because we haven't had it very long to sit, so that the water can separate out and go to the bottom, because remember, the water is going to sink and this oil is going to float. Even as thick and viscous as this looks, you'll see when I put the water in there, it'll go right to the bottom like it wasn't even there. And so there's already water in this, but we haven't given it time to settle out. So we're going to add a little bit of water to it, so when we ignite it, it'll give us a chance to get a boilover. So if you look, as I add this water, it goes right down to the bottom. There's no mixing, there's nothing, it goes right to the bottom. Right now we have the tank burning. This is to simulate a tank in the county. What's happening right now, one of the things that we can get with crude oil that we won't get with gasoline or other flammables is actually boilover. You're not going to boil over a gasoline tank full of gasoline. And in our county, pretty much all the tanks we have are crude oil. They may have processed water and other things in there, but they're not really doing any processing in this county. So they're pulling it out of the ground, they're storing it in a tank that will have water in it from separation, from the process, etc. And then they ship it down south through pipelines to be processed. So most of the tanks we have are just like this, they're a crude oil tank. What happens in a crude oil tank right now that it's on fire is you're getting heat on top. Now that heat's going to travel down. Remember I said there's always water on the bottom. So as this heat wave travels down, at some point it hits that water level and it boils rapidly, and that's called a boilover. Rough estimates, and these are just rule of thumbs, and you can't completely go on this, but you can kind of predict that it takes about 1 to 3 hours per foot for that heat wave to travel down. So if you estimate how much you have, you can kind of come up with a rough idea on how long it's going to take for that heat, for the oil to get hot all the way down to the bottom of the water level. So it's 1 to 3 feet per hour that heat column travels down. Many of the options that we've had here is just letting it burn. Putting this out, we may be able to put it out, we may not, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the video. But we can let it burn. If you're going to let it burn, whether it's a gasoline tanker truck, a gasoline tank, an oil tank, a good rule of thumb is 1 hour per foot. So if you had 4 foot of product in a tank and you were going to let it burn, you can estimate that you've got about 4 hours of burn time. Because you're going to want to figure out, how much smoke am I producing, how much heat, is there any hazards around there, do I let it burn, do I not let it burn? One of the things you need to consider is how long will it burn. And so a rough rule of thumb is 1 hour per foot. So a tank, a 10-foot tank, 10 hours. As it heats that oil up, when it hits that water expands, right? 1700 to 1 when it boils at 212. It's not going to be going down at 212. It'll be much hotter than that, which means as this water boils, it's boiling much more aggressively. It's expanding much more faster with much more force and much larger surface area. And it's going to blow this oil out of this drum or out of this tank because it's got nowhere else to go but up. Again, another rule of thumb is that you can kind of predict that it will create a burn footprint of 10 times the diameter of the tank. So if you had a 10-foot tank, when this boils over and blows oil out of the tank, you have about a 100-foot area that's going to be impinged on by hot oil and heat, indoor heat depending. So that's just, again, another rule of thumb. So just as a repeat, heat layer goes down 1 to 3 feet per hour. If you're going to let it burn, it takes 1 foot per hour to burn the product. So if you had a 4-foot layer or tank, it'd take 4 hours. And your tank for boil over protective action areas about 10 times the diameter of the tank. Are you ever going to be able to cool it completely around all sides? Absolutely not. You will never be able to get enough hose lines around this to cool the tank. So what would end up happening was you'd be cooling certain areas more than the other. And in the end, you'd probably create more grief than you would be protecting yourselves from, because you're going to have one area that's hot and one that's cold, and you're going to cause the tank to deform. Your best bet is to not attempt any cooling at all. You either put the tank out or you let it burn. But cooling is going to give you nothing. Now, you can cool tanks around it, you can cool exposures, but you're really not going to do any benefit by cooling the tank because it's just not practical, not possible, and really doesn't give you any benefit. When we come on scene as a crash unit, we'll ask what the diameter of the tank is, and we'll get questions like, or we'll get answers like it's 5,000 gallons. And that's an important number, but that's not an important number for extinguishment. For extinguishment, we need to know how much surface area we have. If I have a 1 million gallon tank, it holds 1 million gallons, but the diameter is only 1 foot, I'm going to be able to put that out with a spray bottle of foam. If I have 1 million gallons, or heck, I have 1,000 gallons in a 100-foot diameter tank, I'm not going to be able to put that out because of the surface area we're trying to extinguish. So what's critical for us as far as extinguishment is what's the diameter of the tank? What is our surface area that we have to apply foam to? Because that's going to determine whether we can extinguish it or not. The depth of the tank then becomes important next on how long it's going to burn. If we choose that as our mitigation action is to let it burn, because we can estimate how long it's going to take to burn down. That also allows us to determine that boilover potential and when it may occur.
If you take a look at the smoke, You can see some of it just rises normally, others kind of wisp around and almost like a spider web. You see those right there. What that is the volatile organic compounds. That's that BTX ring, that's benzene, toluene, xylene. Those are the ones that really have problems giving you cancer and dangerous in the very low parts per million range, as opposed to just the flammability range that you'd be looking at in other flammables.
We're starting to hear an increase in that crackling sound, and that's just water boiling. If the oil's got a lot of water in it anyways, you may hear that sound close to the beginning of the fire, but it can be an indicator of a potential boil over, as what's happening is we're getting closer to that water level at the bottom of the tank.
Break 431, resume your cover. Simi Central.